I'm wandering around South Africa this afternoon, and while I'm doing that, we're going to hear the truth about the white farmers being murdered in this country. That's coming up on the Hot Zone.
This is the Hot Zone. Engaging with the news in a whole new way, international war correspondent Chuck Holton brings insight into areas of crisis and lets you help those affected.
Hey folks, Chuck Holton here. I'm taking a walk in Johannesburg because I just realized that the interview I did with Ernst Roets was such a fantastic interview, and the audio didn't work right. So the audio is not really good enough to broadcast that, but it probably is good enough. I fixed it up as best I could. Probably is good enough to show you a couple of excerpts. It's such a good interview about the real problem they're having with white farmers being murdered in South Africa. And so I really want you to hear some of what he had to say. As I walk around the neighborhood here, you know, it really could be Cleveland. It doesn't seem like it's Africa. It seems like someplace in America, except for the fact that as I walk around this kind of upper middle class neighborhood, every single house has a large wall like this behind me, and most of them have on top of the wall either concertina wire, or they'll have some kind of electrical fence, and most of them have, I don't know if you can see that over there, it says ADT Armed Response. It's not the people in the States don't have things like that, but just not to the extent that I'm seeing it here in South Africa. And matter of fact, I was warned not to go for a walk out here because they say it's just too dangerous. So you don't see other people out on the street because they say it's too dangerous. You'll get mugged or something. Hopefully that won't happen while I'm out here for this walk. Just want to show you this. Look here. There's electrical fence. Can you see that? Electrical fence up there above the wall. And I'm told it is electrified. See? Safety zone, electric fence. And I guess, you know, just the sheer number of break-ins, home invasions, robberies, muggings, things like that is so off the charts out here that people can't they don't rely on the police. Hey, they got a big old dog, that's good. They don't rely on the police. They say if your house gets broken into, you call your private security company. So people are having to hire their own police. I've even been told they've had to hire their own fire department, like private firefighters, to come put your house out if it catches fire. And the amount of spending that you see on security, private security, physical security, like we see on these fences and stuff, is just amazing. Just off the charts. And part of that, and this is a mixed neighborhood. This is not a white neighborhood or a black neighborhood. It's just a mixed neighborhood. And so I got to go talk to Ernst Roets. He's the vice CEO of Afriforum. I gotta watch when I'm crossing the street here because the traffic goes the wrong direction. So I look that way and we step out and get run over from this direction. He's the vice CEO of Afriforum. They're an advocacy group. Well, here, let me let him tell you.
Give us like a 2-sentence overview of Afriforum and what it is.
So Afriforum is a civil rights organization. It's an NGO based in South Africa. We aim to protect minority rights and cultural and linguistic rights and so forth in South Africa. We have just over 220,000 members who make monthly contributions to our work, which makes us the largest civil rights group on the African continent.
Wow. And what kind of things do you advocate for?
We advocate for civil rights, but particularly freedom in different senses of the word. So it would include free markets, it would include freedom of speech, it would include freedom to operate without unnecessary government intervention or government regulation and so forth. However, as I've said, freedom of speech is something that's very important to us, and it's something that you actively have to fight for in South Africa. But there's another component to the problem in South Africa, which is hate speech, real hate speech. I'm talking about politicians and activists actively on public platforms encouraging the murder of people based on the color of their skin, for example. That is a problem in South Africa. And so that's also something that we are campaigning against. And there are some particular problems in South Africa currently, including the farm murder crisis, farmers being attacked and killed and tortured, many of them. And another particular problem is currently also the push by the South African government to empower the state to expropriate people's private property without compensating them. That's a real threat, and it's something that we are actively campaigning against.
So I hear two different answers to that in the media. One is that it's a myth that that white farmers are not being murdered. The other is sort of a little more subtle, and it's almost like, well, yeah, but you had apartheid, so you deserve it.
Yeah.
Can you answer both of those?
And sometimes you would get the same people making both arguments. The same person, we've seen it, the same person would say, yes, well, remember, there was apartheid in South Africa, so if the people are being murdered, what are you complaining about? And then the next day they would say, well, this is all a hoax, it's all a myth, it's not happening. So I grew up on a farm. I come from an agricultural community, and I know people who've been murdered on farms. I had a friend who went to high school with me who was murdered on a farm. The lady who worked in our farm's office, secretary, her grandparents were killed back then when I was still living on the farm growing up. And I mean, an example, my own brother was attacked on a farm. He survived. And we can go down the list. So it's happening around us, and we have the statistics. And the irony of the whole thing is people are denying this or trying to pretend that it's not happening. While even the South African police service, if you go to them and you ask them for statistics, they would give it to you. Previously, they refused to publish any statistics, but now you can get the official police statistics, and they would give you the numbers, and the people are being attacked and killed on farms. So what we do get then, and that's where sort of the academic side of the argument unfortunately comes in, is you will get people saying, yes, the farmers are attacked and killed, but it's very small numbers because there were only 84 farmers murdered last year, and it's not really that many because look how many people are being killed in South Africa every day. But what is not considered there is, firstly, if for example the news came out that 84 lawyers were murdered in South Africa and tortured, people would say there would be some serious questions, or 84 politicians, or 84 journalists for that matter. But what also makes this important is you need to consider the size of the group. So South Africa is unfortunately a very violent country. Last year there were about 20,000 murders in South Africa. But South Africa is a country consisting of about 50, I think the latest number was, estimation is 58 million people. So that's 20,000 out of 58 million. Now people are saying, well, there's so few farmers being attacked and killed, but you need to ask the question, how many farmers are there? And there's a bit of a dispute about that, but roughly you can say there's about between 30 and 35,000 commercial farmers in South Africa. So you have to make that calculation, and then you will see it's completely disproportionate. Some criminologists have calculated that if you are a commercial farmer in South Africa, your chances of being murdered is twice that of being a police officer in South Africa. And you would expect that if you're a police officer in a country with a high murder rate, your chances of being killed is higher. If you would expect that if you're a farmer, it's not supposed to be a dangerous occupation, maybe due to farming equipment or something like that, but not in terms of someone coming into your house and murdering you while you sleep. But in South Africa, your chances is about, according to some calculations, about twice as high as being a police officer.
So what is the effect of that? How are farmers reacting to what's going on?
Well, people are very angry, and very annoyed and frustrated with what's happening, not only with the reality in South Africa in terms of people being attacked and killed disproportionately and the tortures and all of that, but also the fact that there seem to be quite a few people, actually a great deal of people, who live, for example, in the United States or wherever, who have never been in South Africa, who have some form of what seems to be some political agenda, who actively try to deny the existence of the problem. And they would write opinion pieces for the Washington Post or the New York Times, and they would get a lot of airtime. And it would be some academic in some university in wherever, New York or California or someplace. And I mean, we're sitting here with the reality around us, and then we find people trying to convince the world that this is all a hoax. I mean, I can take you to the farm where my brother was attacked. I can take you to many crimes, even as we're sitting here in Pretoria within a radius of, let's say, within an hour's drive from here. I can keep you busy for a whole week, taking you from crime scene to crime scene. It's happening around us, and there are people trying to just downplay the problem or pretend that it's not real.
Why don't the farmers defend themselves?
Actually, they are, and we found, so that's where we play a big role. That's one of our core goals as an organization, is we go around the country establishing what we call community safety structures. It's like a neighborhood watch or a farm watch type of system. We help the people to get radio contact, radio networks, proper training, self-defense training, help them setting up ops rooms to have communication. We've got a room in this office also where we communicate with them. And we've established about 130 such structures across the country up to now. And you can actually see when communities, local communities, or in this context, farming communities do that, you can see there's a decline in crime. In one case, there hasn't been a farm attack since the establishment of that community, that structure, and stock theft went down with something like 97% in 1 year. So it's a significant part of the solution that people need to organize themselves. Yeah.
So why do you think farmers in particular are being targeted as opposed to, like you say, lawyers or whites in general or whatever?
Well, the question on why particularly the farmers probably has multiple answers or multiple dimensions. Mm-hmm. So some people would say, especially some academics and journalists and political commentators would say, well, it's simply because farms are isolated, so it's easier to attack a farmer. But that doesn't explain a whole lot of other stuff that's happening. It doesn't explain why these farmers would be tied up and tortured for hours, sometimes not even, in some of the extreme cases, 7 or 9 hours they would torture the people. It's not sufficient to say, well, it's only because the farm is far away and the people are poor and because of inequality they want to steal something. So inequality is the problem. It could be a part of the problem, but what makes farm murders different than other murders or crimes in South Africa is, one of the things is, there aren't politicians in South Africa calling for the murder of lawyers or estate agents or journalists, but there are politicians actively calling for the murders of farmers or singing about murdering farmers. Then they would say, no, I only mean it figuratively, it's only symbolic, it's only a metaphor. And then they would say, kill the boer, kill the farmer, one bullet, one settler. And the list goes on. There's so many such songs. White man, you must die is another one. And then they would say, no, it's only a metaphor, I only mean it symbolically. And they would sing that song immediately after making a speech, a political, very populist political speech about how farmers, and particularly white farmers, have to be blamed for everything that is wrong with the country. Literally, that's what our former president said, everything that is wrong with the country. So politicians are actively calling for the murder of these people. If you want to argue about that, you have to at least concede that they are romanticizing the murder of farmers. But there's a few other things. Farmers have become symbolic of, I think to an extent, of the Afrikaner community in South Africa. The Afrikaners.
Can you say that? Start that sentence again. I'm sorry, I moved the
That's fine. So the farming community or farmers in South Africa have to a large extent become symbolic of the Afrikaner community in South Africa. In South Africa, we call it the Afrikaner community. In the rest of the world, it's better known as the Boers. So the word Boer actually means farmer. It's a community that was named after farming, the occupation of farming. And that's the community where I come from, in which I grew up. And it's really part of almost the DNA of the Afrikaners. It's a community of, or a people of farmers to a large extent. Not only, but the majority of us live in cities, but it's very much part of our DNA. And of course, we had apartheid in South Africa. We had a very controversial history of racial segregation. And so the farmers have sort of become this symbol of everything that is wrong. So if you hate white people, then you particularly have to hate farmers. And also the ANC, currently the ruling party in South Africa, when they were still what they called the struggle for South Africa, fighting the apartheid system, they particularly singled out the farmers and said the farmers are the real enemies. Those are the ones we have to kill. And they actually had campaigns to kill farmers. And they even said at the time, I'm talking about the 1980s, that you can also kill their wives and their children. They had a policy like that. And they did so. I mean, there's examples of that. So that was the reality during the struggle against apartheid. Apartheid ended, the ANC came to power, and there's sort of this culture or this climate that has been created in South Africa where if you attack or assault or even murder a farmer, then it's regarded as less condemnable than targeting someone else. And I think that's a part of the reality that many political commentators and analysts, they would concede that it's true, but they wouldn't state it. And I think that's where the picture becomes distorted.
So what's it like then being a white person in South Africa today?
Yeah. So I think if the question is what's it like being white in South Africa, there's a bit of a difference between depending on the language you speak. So there are, and you can see that immigration is a big problem in South Africa. People coming in and people leaving the country. So for example, the English-speaking white community are immigrating in high numbers, leaving the country in high numbers to England, the USA, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and so forth. I think it's easier for them to sort of assimilate elsewhere in the English-speaking world. The Afrikaans-speaking white community, or the Afrikaners, there's also a big problem of immigration, people leaving the country, although the numbers are slightly lower. But being an Afrikaner or a Boer in South Africa, it's the place is very much also part of your identity. And I don't think you wouldn't find Afrikaans-speaking whites if you define them as such. You know, walking around saying, well, this country is our country, and it's white man's country. You don't find people say that. You would find many extremist groups saying that, but it's very insignificant. But the African soil is very much part of who we are. So for example, I've been to America. I like America. I like the country. I like the people, but I don't feel at home there. I've been to Europe. I've been to the Netherlands and to Germany and France, and it felt to me like I was in a completely different country. I didn't feel like I was going home. So Africa is our home. Many people have spoken about the white tribe of Africa, which is the Afrikaners, the Afrikaans-speaking community of South Africa. And because we were formed here, we've been here, my ancestors have been in this country since, I think, more than 100 years before the United States was founded. So we've been here for centuries. And now the perception still is, if you ask some politicians, they would say, if you are white, then by definition, you are a foreigner, you don't belong here, and you must go home. And then you must ask them, you should ask them then, well, if that's your position, do you think a white person in Europe has a right to say to a black person, you don't belong here, you should go home? Because everyone would agree that's racist. If you are in Germany or France, wherever, and you say black people, this is white people's continent, you must go home, go back to Africa, that's racist. But while in South Africa you would find cabinet ministers, members of parliament saying that in parliament, they would say in media interviews, whites must go back to Europe, and somehow that's not racist, or that's not regarded by them as being racist. And I think that's the evidence of the double standards that we have in this country.
Yeah, and so you are seeing white flight, you're seeing people leaving, and how is that affecting the country as a whole? Yeah,
it's definitely affecting the country, and there's been some studies on that. One institute has estimated that about 500,000 people have left since, I think, 1990, 500,000. It's obviously by now, that was a few years ago, so by now it would be more. There's an increase, there's a spike in immigration now again. I think a lot of people thought that there was pretty much consensus in South Africa that Jacob Zuma, our previous president, was a bad president. He was bad for the country. And a lot of people thought that if we can just finish his term and we can get someone better, then things would turn out better. And then his term ended, and then Cyril Ramaphosa became president, who seems to be, he appears better than Jacob Zuma, but then he started with this thing that we need to expropriate private property without compensation. And he went to the US and he denied the existence of farm attacks in South Africa, or farm murders in South Africa. So I think a lot of people feel disillusioned. They feel, well, there's not a future for us here.
All right, that's all we've got for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed the podcast. Like and share and subscribe over at patreon.com/hotzone. I'll see you back here tomorrow.
The Hot Zone is produced by Amy Holton and Livefire Media. Copyright 2019.